Hi, I'm Keenan Hatch, and this video is going to be on industrial and organizational psychology. It is D576, and yeah, this test was pretty similar to the practice test. It went over a variety of different topics. I'm just in this video, I'm kind of going to go through the different topics that I saw in the test, and hopefully it's a little helpful for you guys. So starting off, leadership styles. Well, in this test in general, a lot of the time I spent was studying all of the different topics on the pretest, and making sure I understood the concepts. And a lot of the questions that were on the actual test were in the same concept, but not the same individual item from the concepts. So like leadership styles, the pretest has a few different types of leadership styles, and I knew all of those. And then any of the right answers I knew, any of the wrong answers I knew from the pretest. But there are other answers that were not even mentioned on the pretest, and they liked to ask about those instead of the ones that were on the pretest. So very similar in the fact that it's the same concept, same sort of stuff, but it kind of is testing you on everything that they left out in the individual concepts. So leadership styles, there was a variety of different leadership styles on the test, but they did not ask any questions on those. They might have been some of the answers that were the wrong answers, but or it would just say, here's the leadership style, what does it mean? Or it would give an example. There's a lot of scenarios for all of the different questions and different concepts, and it'd just be a scenario, and then you'd say either what leadership style, for example, they were using, or it would say this is their scenario, they're hoping to implement this leadership style, what does that look like in their scenario? So a few different types of questions there, but it did talk about a lot about the different kinds of tests in interview processes. So there's like cognitive, physical, there's like sensory, motor, or something like that. And again, they'll ask about these, they'll ask about others that are in the same category. Along with that, they asked about the different surveys. So there's like force distribution survey, or different ways that you can measure your employees' productivity. It talks about the different types of errors. So proximity error, distribution error, etc. There was quid pro quo and hostile work environment questions, and how they differ. There was a lot of group motivation questions, and a lot of times the group motivation questions aligned with the leadership style questions. Know the Hawthorne effect, know the Premack principle, and signs of stress is another one. So on the test, there were signs of stress as like hair loss, and on the actual test, it was the same question but a different answer. That was a different sign of stress. Same with burnout. On the pretest, the sign was something like more negativity, or something like that. And on the actual test, it was the same question but a different answer. So just that was kind of like the general feel of the entire test. Was the answers on the pretest or the questions on the pretest are very similar, but just taking it a step in a different direction on each one. So like if you have memorized the pretest, you would have seen the same style of questions, seen the same style of answers, but it's just a different part of it. There were some questions on affirmative action, so knowing that is good. Same with the different civil rights movements and the difference between, I think it was the 5th and 14th Amendment, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, and then knowing neuroticism, extroversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and what that kind of looks like in the work environment is good to know. There's the different cows. I know there's like a paper cow, a meeting cow, a time, and so just knowing what those mean. There was a few different questions on those on the test. Oh yeah, the group change when you're taking your team in a different direction in the work environment. In the pretest, it kind of talks about this a little bit. There's the different acceptance or denial or I don't know, the different steps, I guess, of change. And I learned some from the pretest, but they did ask about a few others that I did not know. But it would be better for you to know beforehand. What I do is I use a whiteboard and a expo marker on every test. It seems a lot easier for me to break down the questions when I can write them down and kind of think through them. I always write down the keywords in the question. So with the scenarios, there's obviously a lot of just junk in the question itself that can kind of confuse you or throw you off. So it's good to just write down the keywords from the question itself. What are you actually looking for? And then the keywords and the answers. And then obviously just go through a process of elimination. In this test, it's if you can break down the vernacular of each question and kind of just look for the right terms in the answers, then it's easier to get the correct answer, even if you're not totally sure, understand the concept but not the individual question. I will say that going into the test, I was not crazy confident in my ability to pass the test, but I was able to get 3 greens and 2 exemplaries. One of the exemplaries was 100%. So if I was able to do it with not a ton of confidence, I'm sure you guys will be able to do it, especially if you focus on those concepts that we've talked about. There was actually probably a good handful of questions that were basically gimme questions. They would have a question that was like, what would be good for this employee? And 3 of the answers would be bad. 1 of the answers was good. Obviously, the good answer is going to be the right answer. And so there's a few questions like that where if you just write them down and think through it logically, you'll come to the right answer and not necessarily even need to understand what the individual concepts or terms in the question are, because of the way the question was written was very easy. So just go through it. Hopefully this gives you a little bit more confidence in in your ability to pass this test. It is not crazy complicated. If you just go through the pre-test and understand what is going on in the pre-test, you'll probably be able to go through the actual test and make sure that you do, take your time. Yeah, I think that's basically it. If you have any questions, comment. YouTube is not my life, but I will do my best to get to the comments. And then like and subscribe if you're in the psychology program. Yeah, have a great day, and hopefully it's helped. Bye.